At 68 years old, my daughter left me alone at Dubai International Airport at no passport, no cell phone, no money. And the worst part? She did it looking directly into my eyes, with a cold smile on her lips, holding my bag as if it were a war trophy. I stood there in the gleaming terminal, surrounded by people speaking languages I didn't understand. The air conditioning chilled my panic-soaked skin. The smell of expensive perfumes mixed with Arabic coffee. I was 68 years old. I was wearing a wrinkled beige linen shirt, and my blood pressure was rising. I felt that familiar tingling in my fingertips. Rebecca had exploded at me in the check-in line that I had never done anything but drain her energy. Luxury. The word echoed in my head as I watched other passengers. I was there because I saved every penny of my $850 monthly to watch the sunset over the dunes, to feel that there was still a world beyond the four walls. But Rebecca insisted on accompanying me. To make sure you... Money? Those were her exact words. I accepted because, deep down in my mother's heart, the argument started because of a seat upgrade. I had asked the attendant if it would be possible to change. That's all. An innocent question. Rebecca interpreted this as a lack of respect for her money. She hadn't, but I'll get to that. You're pathetic. Mom, she whispered softly, so only I could hear. You always have been. Dad died trying to escape you, trying to breathe away from your mediocrity. That hurt me deeply. My husband, Andrew, had died 15 years ago in a car accident. Ammunition against me. When I opened my mouth to reply, she simply snatched my purse from my hand. That brown leather. Rebecca! I shouted, my voice choked with emotion. Rebecca, my documents. She didn't look back. She kept walking, her bag swinging on her shoulder, like in a shampoo commercial. And I stood there paralyzed, because part of me still couldn't believe that my own... But she was there. She went through security, crossed the checkpoint without looking back, and disappeared. She had canceled my ticket. She had planned it. The upgrade she so angrily refused was because my name was... She knew, and she took me there just to humiliate me one last time. Panic came in waves. First denial. She'll be back. It was just a scare. Then anger. How dare she? And then a real, visceral fear that made my legs weak. Without a phone. With no one who knew where I was. Tried to explain in Portuguese and then in broken English. As if I were just another crazy woman. Before anything could happen, I felt a presence beside me. Wearing a spotless dark gray suit, leaned slightly toward me, displaying a mixture of curiosity and something that seemed... He spoke English with a refined accent. Madam, you're in trouble, aren't you? It wasn't a question. Before I could answer, he continued, his voice low and urgent. My driver is on his way. Trust me now. Ask questions later. Then he gently but firmly grasped my arm and whispered, Same time. Your daughter will regret leaving him here. I guarantee it. I looked at that stranger. I looked at the security guards who were starting to. I looked at the immense, cold, and indifferent terminal. I grabbed his arm and said, Get me out of here. The black Mercedes pulled up in front of the airport with tension, yet radiating power, tinted windows, gleaming wheels, and a driver who got out wearing white gloves. I went in. The interior smelled of new leather and that expensive... Breathe, he said without looking at me, as if reading my thoughts. I know it sounds crazy, but you're safe. Who are you? I managed to ask. Why did you help me? My name is Khalil al-Rashid. I am 72 years old. I was born in Saudi Arabia, but I lived in the United States for 20 years. I have businesses in Dubai, New York, and Riyadh. The last piece of information was conveyed with a long, sorry, I murmured, but that doesn't explain why. His voice hardened. I saw the way she smiled while she did it. I recognized that cruelty. My son has the same smile when he thinks he's fooling me. Adjusting his shirt cuffs. I need you to pretend to be my wife for a few hours. My first instinct was to laugh. Are you crazy? Probably. For the first time, he managed something resembling a smile. I have a meeting tomorrow with very conservative Saudi. They don't trust widowers for long-term business. My late wife always accompanied me to these meetings. And I can't lose this deal. There are $400 million at stake. $400 million. The number was so absurd it didn't even seem real. Actresses I don't know. I tried. They all looked exactly like what they were. Paid. He looked directly at me. But you have this real pain in your eyes. This is madness. Yes, he agreed. But tell me, what are your options? Go back to the airport without documents? Try to contact your daughter, who clearly doesn't want to be found. Or accept my offer, sleep in a comfortable room. And tomorrow we can discuss the next steps with a clear... Each word was a truth I didn't want to admit. He was right. What exactly do you expect from me? Wear an elegant dress tomorrow night. Smile by my side during a 3-hour dinner. Show familiarity with me. Nothing intimate, just the complicity that long-term couples don't contradict anything I say. And in return, I'll offer you a room, food, a phone so you can contact whomever you need, and $15,000 when it's all over. $15,000, 5 months of my retirement pension? You shouldn't. His answer was so honest it took me by surprise. Offer you money? Would they make a point of mentioning that you have a cell? I could have simply taken you anywhere. But I'm being transparent because, strange as it may seem, I looked at Khalil, I really looked. I saw a weary man, perhaps as weary as I was. Have loved him, stabbed him in the back. All right, I heard my own voice say. I'll pretend to be your wife. But on one condition? He raised an eyebrow, surprised. What? You can help me find out exactly what my daughter did. You can help me make sure she never does it to anyone else. Khalil extended his hand, firm, decisive. My name is Catherine, I added, shaking her hand. That artificial palm-shaped island I used to see in magazines and thought I'd never set foot on one day. With outrageous modernism, white arches, enormous glass windows, a fountain in the center of the front garden where the water... A woman appeared at the door. She must have been about 40 years old. She was wearing a discreet wine-colored dress and a scarf. This is Mara, Khalil introduced. She takes care of the house. She speaks English because she worked in London for years. The bedroom was bigger than my entire living room at home. A bathroom with a soaking tub, a balcony overlooking the dark sea dotted with yacht lights. I went downstairs and found him in a brightly lit office. You can call anywhere, he said. This is my number. If you have any problems, let me know. I called my sister Eleanor in Georgia. It was almost 5 at home, but she answered on the 3rd ring. Catherine, for God's sake, where are you? What did she do? I felt my blood boil. She said that you two had argued and... When she came back to look for you, you had disappeared. That girl is lying, Eleanor said finally. And you know what? I'm not surprised, Catherine. I need to tell you something I promised never to reveal. 3 months ago, Rebecca called me. She asked if I knew how much your house was worth. She said you were becoming senile and that we needed to... She tried to convince me to sign a document with her, declaring you incapable. The air left my lungs. Does she really believe that? I whispered. That I killed Andrew? The accident wasn't anyone's fault, Catherine. He lost control of the car on his own. No. I felt the words come out before I could stop them. The report proved it, but I hid it from Rebecca. She was 15. I didn't want her to grow up hating her father's memory. I lied, saying it was a mechanical failure, always comparing me to him. And I was always falling short. So she created this narrative in her head that I kicked him. And I let it happen, because I felt guilty anyway. He stormed out and never came back. What are you going to do now? Eleanor asked. I thought of Khalil downstairs. I thought of Rebecca, who at that moment was probably heading home. Thinking she had gotten rid of me. I will survive, I replied, my voice firmer than I had expected. I will do Khalil this favor. I will get my money, and I will return home prepared to finally confront my... Mara took me to a boutique in the Dubai Mall, where the saleswomen treated me like royalty as soon as she... I chose a petrol blue dress, elegant without being flashy, poise that years of managing hotels had given me. The dinner took place in a restaurant on the top floor of that sail-shaped hotel that seems to float above the sea. Men in their 60s, dressed in impeccable traditional attire. The conversation flowed mostly in Arabic. I smiled at appropriate moments, drank water while they drank pomegranate juice, and observed. Who addressed me directly in English with an accent. Ar-Rashid, your husband mentioned that you have experience in the hotel. Please tell us about that. All eyes turned to me. Khalil stiffened imperceptibly, placed my glass of water on the table with studied delicacy. I worked for 32 years as operations manager at the hotel. I started as a receptionist at age 20. I climbed every rung of the hierarchy until I took over the... When I left, Our occupancy rate was 94%. Consecutive years. Silence. Then Sheikh Ibrahim asked, "Why did you leave?" But I looked at Khalil and saw in him the same weariness of, "My husband died. I needed to focus on my daughter. And when she grew up, I realized I had forgotten who I was besides a mother So I retired too early and spent 15 years invisible." "Honesty," said Sheikh Ibrahim, "is rare in our circles." They discussed the business. A chain of boutique hotels. Khalil presented figures, projections, and strategies. "Does your wife agree with this investment?" Khalil froze. That question wasn't in the script. Table. 30 years of experience in the hotel industry had allowed. "With some reservations," I replied. "The projection for Dubai is overly optimistic, but Muscat is undervalued. There's potential there that the numbers don't capture." The silence was absolute. Then Sheikh Ibrahim began to laugh. A genuine laugh that, "Khalil, my friend, your wife understands business better than half the consultants you introduce us to." He slammed his fist on the table. "We'll close the deal, but on the condition that she revises the plans for Oman." We stood there, gazing at the dark sea. A heavy silence between us. "Sorry," I finally said. "I shouldn't have given my opinion. I ruined the script." "Ruined?" He turned to me, and for the first time I saw a complete smile on that face. "Ibrahim was testing you. He wanted to see if you were genuine or just putting on a... And you weren't just genuine. You were brilliant." "Mistakes." "No, it was competence." He took a thoughtful sip. "I need to make you an offer. And this time I'm not kidding." My stomach clenched. "I'm listening. Marry me for real. 6 months. Formal contract with very clear clauses." He raised his hand before I could protest. "Listen to everything before you refuse. You would receive $850,000 deposited into your account. You would live here, work as a consultant on hotel projects. With a separate, you would have full legal protection. My lawyers would ensure that Rebecca couldn't touch anything." "Why would you do that?" "Because my son is trying to drive me out of the company. Business destroys his argument that I'm senile and isolated. And because honestly, tonight I saw something I haven't seen in years. Someone who, 6 months, and then an amicable divorce. You keep the money, the contacts you make, the experience. But I guarantee that Rebecca will never be able to diminish true independence." "I am capable," I said in a surprisingly firm voice. "First, I want your lawyers not only to protect my assets. If she sold my house illegally, falsified documents. Done. Secondly, this marriage is professional. Separate bedrooms, separate lives outside of public engagements. Mutual respect, nothing more." I completely agree. Third, I hesitated but forced the words out. "If at any point I become a burden, if I hinder more than help, I've spent my life being a burden to my daughter. I don't want to be a burden to anyone else." Khalil placed the glass on the table and held my shoulders. "Catherine, listen carefully. You are not a burden. You never were. Your daughter invented this story because she needed But I saw you today. I saw intelligence, dignity, courage. I saw a woman who deserves to rebuild her own life. But I'm adding one of my own. You promise you'll stop." The tears came without warning. "We have a deal," I whispered. 3 days later, we got married in a registry office in Dubai. 6-month contract. Professional witnesses. No romance, just signatures on documents that changed everything. When I returned to the mansion as Catherine Al-Rashid, Rebecca with a single message: "I'm alive. I'm married. And you no longer have power over me. We'll see each other at home when I decide to come back." Her reply came within seconds. "You're crazy." Maybe. But it was the most lucid madness of my life. Khalil wasn't kidding when he said I'd be working as a... On the second day of our official marriage, I was already in meetings analyzing architectural designs. I discovered I had a dormant talent. Those years managing Excelsior weren't just a matter of survival. They gave me a clinical eye for efficiency, guest flow. I took the proposal for Oman that I mentioned at that first. Sheikh Ibrahim was so impressed that he asked me to present. I took a 2-hour solo trip to Muscat. I introduced myself in English to 10 men who, initially, 15 minutes later, they were taking notes. However, Khalil's lawyers were investigating. They discovered that Rebecca had in fact sold my house for. She forged a power of attorney using a signature she copied. She received $680,000 and deposited it all into a joint. A public prosecutor who clearly knew of the illegality and, furthermore, She opened a loan in my name, committing 35% of my retirement income for 36 months. Registered in her name. Everything documented. Everything illegal. Everything verifiable with the documents that the lawyers— "We can prosecute her criminally," said Doctor. "Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. She could face 2 to 6 years in prison." I sat in silence, staring at that file. "Not yet," I finally replied. "Keep everything, but not yet." Rebecca arrived like a whirlwind. She didn't ring the doorbell. She simply walked through the delivery. She entered through the stone door, her stiletto heels clinking violently against the marble, summoning the dead. I was in the living room reviewing contracts when I heard. There she was. Her blonde hair was messy from the trip. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. Her makeup was smudged, but it was her expression that shocked me. Pure hatred. "Finally," she spat out the words, her voice echoing off the high ceiling. "I thought I'd have to call the police to get into your—" Every word was carefully calculated to hurt. "Rebecca," I replied calmly, "you entered private property without permission. Don't try that Lady of the Mansion act." She threw her purse on the floor. "I know exactly what you're doing. You sold yourself to that rich old man and now you think you—" Khalil appeared at the top of the stairs. Rebecca looked at him with such visceral contempt that it— "So you're the con artist who manipulated a senile and—" "Be careful with your accusations," Khalil said in an icy— "I am legally married to your mother. Everything is documented, witnessed, absolutely transparent." Rebecca laughed, a high-pitched, distorted sound. "She just got disoriented in a foreign airport and, mysteriously, she turns up married to a billionaire. Any judge would declare that undue influence. Any judge would analyze the facts," I retorted. "Canceled my ticket, took my bag with documents and money. To teach you a lesson," she exploded. "So you finally understand that you can no longer suck me." The absurdity of this reversal left me speechless. "Yes!" Rebecca trembled all over. "My whole life you've made me feel guilty. Guilty for being born. Guilty for needing things." "Escape you?" "Rebecca, your father wasn't running away." "Don't lie to me." She grabbed a decorative vase from the side table and threw. The sound of the porcelain shattering was brutal, more menacing. "With your demands, your complaints, your mediocrity. He could have been extraordinary. But you imprisoned him in a small life, in a small house. And when he finally tried to breathe, you pushed him down that path." The silence that followed was dense. "I was home when he left," I said, each word laden with meaning. "You know that. You were at home being unbearable, being what you've always been, a burden." The silence was deafening. But the time had come. Time to refute every accusation, every lie, every distortion that Rebecca had created to justify her own. But before I could speak, she pulled a folder out of the bag she had thrown. "I came prepared," she said. "Did I waste it?" I repeated, finally raising my voice. "Did I waste it?" "Yes." Rebecca opened the folder. There was $2.8 million worth of land. And when Grandma died, you sold everything and the money simply disappeared. To pay off your father's debts. She froze. "Lie." "That's true." I took another step. "Your father failed in a project. He owed money to contractors, suppliers, investors. $4 million that I only discovered after the funeral. I paid every cent your father owed. And I saved enough to ensure you could study." "No, the life insurance paid for my college. It barely covered the funeral and 3 months of bills. Your college, 5 years, $5,300 a month. It was me working double shifts, accepting every available overtime hour, eating poorly so that your refrigerator would be full when—" Rebecca was pale, but she didn't back down. "If you had done all that, you would have told me. You would have thrown it in my face. Because mothers shouldn't have to demand things. Because I loved you more than my own dignity." My voice faltered. "Because I thought that one day, someday, you would understand. That you would grow up and realize that love doesn't need to—" "Love?" She laughed, but it was a desperate laugh. "You call this love to suffocate me. To make me feel like I owe you something for the rest of my—" "I never asked you for anything." "You didn't need to ask, Rebecca," I shouted. It was there, always with that martyr's look. "You compared everything I did to Dad. Of every achievement of mine. You said he would have been proud, as if I existed only as an—" And there, finally, I saw the real wound. It wasn't the debts. It wasn't the money. Not even Andrew's death. It was the fact that Rebecca had spent 25 years competing. "You're right," I said, and I saw shock on his face. "I used your father as a benchmark for everything." And that was wrong. Khalil descended the rest of the stairs holding a tablet, $680,000 from the illegal sale of the house, planning how to keep her mother out of the country long, enough to consolidate the misappropriation. Rebecca grew even paler. "Because my daughter," I replied. "You underestimated who I could become when I stopped." She looked at me, she really did look, and in that instant, 2 years later, I was sitting on the terrace of my penthouse in Muscat, Oman, which painted the mountains in shades of orange that looked. On the table next to me, reports from the hotel we had, the Al Yasmin Boutique, the first of a chain of 5 that. Occupancy rate, 91%. Online reviews, 4. 8 out of 5 stars. First quarter profit above projections. Rebecca called after 3 days of silence. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "I need to talk to you in person." When I met her at the hotel, she looked different. Shorter hair, no heavy makeup, wearing simple clothes. "When he found out you had proof that you could sue us, he said he wouldn't risk his career because of my family." "And why did you call me? So that I would feel sorry for you?" "No." She lifted her face, her red eyes staring at me. "Real forgiveness. Not because I'm cornered, but because—" Her voice faltered. "Because I finally understood what I did." "I'll give you a choice," I said slowly. "You return every penny that was stolen. You regularize the sale of the house or repurchase it at. You cancel the loan. You pay for the car you registered in your name. All with interest and regularization. I don't have all that money. Then sell what you bought with that money. Take out a loan. Figure it out." My voice hardened. "You're a doctor. You have a stable income. You can pay it back in 5 years. I don't care. But return the money. And if I do that, you won't sue me? If you do this, publicly acknowledge what you did and apologize. Not, you are no longer my daughter in anything other than genetics. You will inherit nothing when I die. You will not participate in decisions about my life." The tears were now real. "You have 72 hours to decide," said Doctor. "After that, we will file a criminal complaint." 2 years later, Rebecca had fulfilled all her promises and paid every penny. She called via video. "Mom, Catherine," she corrected herself. "I'm not asking you to consider me your daughter again, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be the person you deserve to have raised." "I understand," I finally replied, "and I respect that. But Rebecca, rebuilding trust takes time. A lot of time." "I know," she nodded. "That's why I'm not asking. I'm just letting you know I'm here when and if you want me." I opened the Fresh Start Institute, a project I had been. It operated in a rented building in Atlanta, renovated with some of the money I had saved. The goal, to empower women over 60 to return to the courses in computer skills, hospitality, basic management, all free of charge. The first class had 18 students, women with stories similar, discarded widows, exhausted mothers, forgotten grandmothers. "Madam, were you afraid to start over so late?" "Terrified," I replied honestly. "But I discovered that courage isn't the absence of fear." Today, at 70 years old, I divide my time between Oman, Dubai. Khalil is by my side on all my travels, not as a husband but as a partner in the fullest sense of the word. We have separate rooms, partially independent lives. And on nights when the weight of loneliness oppresses us, I spent 40 years